All right, I see what looks to me to be clearly a calculator problem. So let's have your calculator handy. So starting with the domain, -5 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 5. So these are the x values I'm looking between. Determine the coordinates of 2 local minimums and 1 local maximum. So let's have a look at this graph. So I'm going to start by plugging it into my y equals. So let's clear out what's there. So 3/4 x to the 4th power minus x cubed minus 9x squared plus 20. So I'm going to start by looking at my table of values first to see what my y value should be. I know that my x's are going -5 to 5. So I'm going to go into table settings and start with -5. And now I'm going to go into my table and see that I'm at about 400 here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So we're at about 400, and then we're getting smaller, and then we're increasing again up to about 100. So we're going down to about -30. So when I make my graph, I'm going to go from about -50 up to 400 with my y's. So it tells me to look at my x's from -5 to 5. And with my y's, I'm going to go from about -50 up to about 400. And because it's so big, I'm going to count by 50s. All right, so now I'm going to look at this graph. All right, and I can see here's a minimum, here's a maximum, here's another minimum. So that's what it told me. It told me to find 2 local minimums, 1 local maximum. So I'm going to use my calculator. So it looks to me that my local minimum is right around -2. So I'm going to go between -3 and -1 when I look for it. So calc, and I'm going to look for a minimum. I'm going to go between -3 and -1, I said. And my guess was that it was around -2. So there's local minimum 1. I was right, it was at -2. Let's find the next one. So now I'm going to look for the max that was in the middle. My max looks like it's at 0, so I'm going to go between -1 and 1. And my guess is that it's at 0. And I was right. So that's my y-intercept. And now let's find my last minimum. So it is between, it looks like it's at about 3. So I'm going to go between 2 and 4 and guess that it's at 3. And I was right, it is at 3. All right, so my coordinates, remember, I'm going to write them as coordinates. So for my first one, I had -2, 4. And my second minimum was 3 and -27.25. So those are my local mins. And then my y-intercept, 0, 20 was my max. And again, it's a local max because it keeps going up forever. So it's not a full max, but that's my local max. All right, so now let me move these out of the way. All right, write down the y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept is also the local max, so y equals 20, or I could say 0, 20 is my y-intercept. So sketch my graph. So now, notice we've only gone up to 50 here, so we're not going to see our super highs, super lows, but we want our key points on here. So if I'm going up to 50, then if this is my y-intercept, up here has to be 50. So let's see how many boxes that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I must be counting by 5s. So let's call that 5. So 10, 15, here's 20. this must be 50 up here. That means that I have -20, -40 down here. All right, so we have our y-intercept is at 20. We had -2,4 was a key point, so -2,4 is going to be around there. And then we had 3, -27, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I'm going between -5 and 5, then my -2 must be here. So there's my -2,4. My 3, -27.25. So 1, 2, 3, -20, that's 5. It's going to be somewhere around there. I'm going to label it 3, -27.25, so we know that what the values are. There was my y-intercept, and here was my, I'm going to label that as -2,4, so we know that. So we saw that our graph came way down, but again, we can use our table to help us find a few more points. So I can see that at -4, I'm all the way up to 132. So I'm not even going to see this point by the time I get to -4. -3, we're at 26, almost 27. So -3, I'm going to already be up to about here. So I can use this to help me show that my graph goes way up really fast. And it was a little bit smoother around there. So let's try and make it a little bit smoother. So I flattened out around here, and we know that, oh, we didn't find our x-intercept actually. So let's go back and find our x-intercepts. So we're going to want to find zeros, and we can see that it's somewhere between 1 and 2. So I'm going to say 1 is my left bound, 2 is my right bound, and 1.5 is my guess. And I get 1.5, and then it looks like it comes back up right at around 3. So about 1.5, somewhere around here. Oh, it couldn't be 3, that must have been 4. So something like that. So down, hit my minimum, come shooting back up as much as I can. So again, using our table to help us plot points and trying to make a smooth curve when we graph it. So I'm going to drag this over here to show that we used it to help us.